if the planets and the asteroids can affect us, then an interstellar visitor from outside our solar system would affect us. I think this is now the beginning of the deeper relationship of science and quantum mechanics. Telling me right now, it's like, no, actually prepare for something bigger than any of us can believe, because our entire structure's been a lie.
And this is what shocked the scientists, because the thing that was supposed to heat up when it entered our solar system and release some gas wasn't doing so. So I'd really say this marked the preparation phase of humanity's next evolutionary cycle. So I'm thinking, like, with this different chemical composition, you know, due to its high carbon dioxide content, it could symbolically be showing us that a different spiritual chemistry is about to enter humanity.
So let's talk about some deep shit.
It's lunacy. Lunacy is logic.
With Lilith and Dr. Charlier.
And welcome back, Cosmic Family, to another episode of Lunacy and
Logic.
Yeah, where you have your host, Dr. Charlier, and your co-host
Lilith. I'm the Kundalini alchemist, guiding you through sacred transformations of consciousness. Together, Dr. Charlier and I do this with the use and integration of traditional Chinese medicine, astrology and universal law, spiritual awakening mastery, and of course, last but certainly not least, our connection to God.
So we're really excited for breaking news, y'all. Like, this is a special episode that we wanted to bring to you, since the intergalactic space is becoming a little crowded, and we are all about astrology here. So we are definitely paying attention to the skies above us, and so really excited to be bringing a really special episode.
Indeed, we're going to start off with the codes of destiny, and then we'll go into the scientific facts around all the interstellar comets we've seen before, what they mean from an esoteric point, and then we'll go into 3-eye atlas.
Yes, so let's talk about some deep shit. So going straight into codes of destiny, so we can get right into it, everybody.
We are going to just start off with a quick codes of destiny, because there's one particular day actually that we're going to do with codes of destiny. So on the 19th of December, we have a new moon at 28 degrees Sagittarius. This could be, I think it's 19th, 20th of December. So this marks the halfway point between the 6 new moons, all taking place at 28 degrees. So something has already started to manifest here, something new. And this is actually, this new moon is a superstellium, because we've got the sun and the moon at 28 degrees. We've got Venus at 24 degrees. We've got the galactic center at 27 degrees. Mars is also there just a few degrees away in Capricorn. And all of this, y'all, is going down the same day that 3-eye atlas reaches its closest point to Earth. And then right after that, we have the solstice on the 21st of December. So this is no coincidence.
Ooh, yeah.
And in fact, we are, as Charlier said, interrupting our normal programming today, because the entire episode is going to be about 3-eye atlas and also 2 other interstellar visitors we have received over the last 8 years. So we're going to be looking at some scientific data around each of these, what the ancients said the appearance of comets indicate, look at what happened on Earth after the first 2 comets came, and then decode what energies 3-eye atlas is bringing with it by esoteric extrapolation. So it is a jam-packed episode today that I, for one, am super excited about.
Yes, it's very exciting, just because we get to be a little geeky in our scientific terms on top of being esoteric. And I think that's such a very interesting convergence of information and facts today that we're having, just because so often we've run into science really going against the esoteric metaphysical. And so now today I feel like we're really having to put ourselves together in this convergence that quantum mechanics has bridged the conversation between esoteric mysticism and science. So y'all, like, this is super important to have a conversation about intergalactic things are coming through. I'm just going to say things for now until we figure out whether it's a comet, whether it's a spaceship, whether it's something interesting.
I knew you would bring that into the conversation,
Always. You all know, if you guys don't know anything about me, I love galactic conversations. So we're definitely going to go into a galactic conversation this time.
So, okay, so let's begin.
So yeah, let's go right into it and break down and give you all the scientific knowledge behind, this I guess this space thing that's coming to our solar system.
So, since as far back as we know, we have witnessed comets pass by Earth, and up until about 8 years ago, all comets for us originated from our own Oort cloud. But this is still the most distant, dark, untouched region of our solar system. So symbolically, it showed us like something from the invisible realms entering the visible world. And across the many and various cultures, from Chinese to Hindu, Egyptian, Babylonian, Greek, Mayan, you name it, they were seen as signs of sudden divine intervention, a correction of imbalance. So this is like where they come through our solar system like something of a cosmic cleaning brush, because they represented omens of like karmic correction, alignment with truth, purging of false power, restoring of spiritual authority. So they were seen as like a marker of a new cycle, and one where spiritual authority gets activated or soul contract cycle resets. And so in essence, it was really a mark of spiritual transitions or activators of collective evolution. So I thought maybe we could go a bit deeper into this, discuss what we know so far, and what, according to ancient wisdom, it could mean for us.
Yes.
So let's start off with the fact that we as humanity currently only have 3 confirmed interstellar visitors to our solar system. That is, comets that come from beyond the solar system and beyond the Oort cloud. Okay, so the first interstellar comet we detected was Oumuamua. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but that's how I'm going to pronounce it throughout the episode, so deal with it, which came in 2017. So this was the first comet that had lots of alien conspiracy theories around it. And the reason for that was that it did have some strange behavior, even scientifically speaking. So it passed through our solar system and it was observed leaving it, and its trajectory speed proved that it wasn't bound to the sun. So this is how we know it came from outside the solar system, because it wasn't bound to the sun. But the strangest part about Oumuamua was that it didn't have a visible cometary coma or tail, which is unusual for a comet approaching the sun, because a comet is really just a dirty ice ball. So generally it's made of like frozen water, carbon dioxide, methane, dust, that kind of stuff. And when it gets closer to the sun, the heat makes the ice burn from solids to gases, which then escape the surface, shooting up tiny dust particles, and then the sunlight reflects off that dust, and the ultraviolet light ionizes some of that gas, creating emissions of light. And this is essentially why the comet looks like it has a glowing cloud around it. This glow is what we call the coma. The tail of the comet is then formed from this coma as the solar winds and sunlight push the comet's dust and gas away, forming the tail as we see it. And so this is, in a brief nutshell, is what constitutes normal comet behavior for us. But Oumuamua didn't have a coma or a tail, even as it approached the sun. And this is what shocked the scientists, because the thing that was supposed to heat up when it entered our solar system and release some gas wasn't doing so. And so the alien conspiracy theories began from the very first visitor, because its behavior was essentially considered unnatural. I mean, it also had some other strange data, like its extreme brightness variation, the tumbling rotation, and the non-gravitational acceleration as it left our solar system, but we're not going to go into that now. The point that I wanted to make is that it came from outside our solar system and had unexpected behavior by not having a coma or tail. And so it essentially created a total paradigm shift, because it showed us for the first time that our solar system could, in fact, be visited by interstellar objects. And really, this is what opened the door on the scientific and esoteric concepts of galactic level exchange of matter and energy in a new way. So this, Charlier, is really giving me Uranus vibes. That is like, expect the unexpected. And Uranus was actually busy finishing off in Aries at the time, which is for me like the sudden birth of something new, right? So at this stage, although not scientifically linked, What a coincidence, y'all. Because speaking of a marker of a new cycle beginning, it was made around that time. It was around that time that AI made its first big leaps with OpenAI releasing its large scale models. I mean, this was actually just one of the many major things that happened around 2017, 2018, because it was really a time period of major change all round. You know, we had a lot of truth exposed. Remember with the Me Too movement? That was really a transformation around power, abuse, and truth telling. We had the cryptocurrency explosion with Bitcoin surging to its first like 20,000 peak. We had extreme weather events like major hurricanes and floods with Harvey and Irma and a few others. That basically reshaped US disaster response policy. We had the Cali wildfires. We had the global awakening around privacy, surveillance, and manipulation with that Cambridge Analytica scandal. So, with all this power reckoning, technological evolution, and in general, just a lot of global instability at that time, there was some real breakdown of old structures starting to occur. And I would say, like, collective trauma starting to surface, like a global eighth house purge starting. So I'd really say this marked the preparation phase of humanity's next evolutionary cycle.
Yeah, I still remember 2017 when we were just hearing about it, and I was already deep into my spiritual practices and journey. But this is kind of, for me, I was actually guided to leave LA and go home to Houston. So at the end of 2017, when all this happened, I was also kind of sent home to Houston and followed my like a different path. And so 2017 was big for me. So it's interesting that the first interstellar object shows up and starts to create. It's hard to say because you can't necessarily say because of Oumuamua that things happen on the planet, or it could be the planet things happen on the planet, and Oumuamua just happened to show up there to see or to kind of visit us, right? You can't say necessarily like you can't say one caused the other or the other caused the one to come, but that's a very interesting, deeper conversation because from like a human standpoint, right? We could see the object coming in and causing a lot of these things on our planet, but actually astrologically speaking, we knew, and many other religious groups and books in spiritual books talk about this timeline, the time that we're in today, that they prophesize or they could see the astrological timing to see that things were going to happen on the planet. And I just feel like it's easy for us to kind of go, oh, Oumuamua did this to us, and this is why we have to be careful of intergalactic, objects coming into our field. But maybe it isn't, right? Maybe it's actually the planet and the astrological timing is experiencing these shifts, and that allowed and opened up the conversation that suddenly we are getting interstellar visitors. I mean, it's really silly that only in 2017 we could see and prove that we had an interstellar visitor, but until what? Until before 2017, did we not have any telescopes to actually see these objects coming into our solar system, right? So that's like a deeper conversation, but let us start talking about this just because this is why we talk about 3I, because it's the third interstellar object.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the same thing really. Like, the fact of the matter is, we're using spectroscopy right now to analyze these comets. So, we didn't always have that technology, right? Um, so, yeah, it's questionable whether we've actually never received an interstellar visitor before or if we just don't know about it. I mean, my guess is we just don't know about it. But that's also why I'm saying, like, these are the first three that have been recorded that we know about, you know?
Yeah. That is starting to change the conversation of either whether we're alone or not.
But exactly. So we're gonna get into stuff like that, and especially because you're asking now, the link between the comets and what's happening on Earth. There's no more a link, like a scientific link between the comets and what's happening on Earth than there is with astrology and what's happening on Earth. really. Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So we're just here to interpret the esoteric meanings based on the law of correspondence, which is as above, so below, and that is the basis of our findings.
Yeah, I heard a really cool analogy, right? It's the idea of like how a boat can create waves and create waves on the shoreline of the beach, right? And how however fast that boat is going to create more waves. And so in astrology, if we're talking about these giant, massive gravitational planets are causing these vibrational waves along our what's it called our axis of the planet, and we're experiencing things on the planet based on those gravitational fields called celestial planets, then it makes sense when we go deeper into the conversation on how do asteroids affect us, right? So it's like going from like when a giant cruise ship makes a huge amount of waves on the beach compared to like a small speedboat, which is the difference between a celestial planet like Mars, right, or the Sun, Jupiter, and then a small comet like we talk about. Charlie is a comet. There's so many thousands of comets in our solar system that do affect us. But now we're talking about something that came out of the solar system into our solar system, and we have to follow the same theories that we follow with astrology. So if the planets and the asteroids can affect us, then an interstellar visitor from outside our solar system would affect us. And that's why this conversation is a much deeper conversation, because we're not just talking about some object showing up in our field and nothing happens to us, because we already are we're having this conversation because the moons, the sun, the Jupiter, and all the planets are affecting us. And so we do have to take into account that suddenly an outside planet, an outside thing is coming into our field is affecting us. And so I think this is now the beginning of the deeper relationship of science and quantum mechanics, or really space physics and like esoteric mysticism.
No, but exactly. So the next visitor, which was confirmed as an interstellar comet, was Borisov, which came in, drumroll please, 2019.
Ooh.
I don't even need to say more on this, as you know exactly what news cycle began then, and many would say this was divine intervention at its finest. This comet you might have heard much less about than you did Oumuamua and Atlas, because it did actually have a big bright coma and tail, behaving normally for a comet. And so no alien conspiracies on this one, at least not from what I can remember. I don't know if you can remember any, Charlier, on Borisov. We just heard about Oumuamua and Atlas.
Yeah, and even just the name, right? Just the name, like Oumuamua sounds Hawaiian, and then Barusoft, like who came up with that name, right?
Borisov. It sounds Russian.
Yeah. And the reason why it's really funny is because this happened right before COVID. So obviously everything else dropped, because once, even when this planetary thing showed up because of COVID, we literally lost our brains during that time. And so I feel like anything that would have happened outside of the planet didn't bother us, because literally the planet was in a shit show for, I don't know, 3 years.
Yeah, but I want to say though that Borisov was in fact thought by scientists to be one of the most pristine comets they ever observed. Meaning it had possibly formed in a very cold, distant, and undisturbed environment, which then caused it to essentially preserve primordial material. And this then showed us that interstellar comets can in fact resemble and differ from our native comets. Because as it showed us from the scientific data which we were able to collect, that planetary system formation outside of our solar system may follow similar processes, although not identical to our own.
Hmm. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. We still haven't traveled the rest of the space, and so we would not actually should not assume, that's really bad science to assume that whatever goes in our solar system is happening everywhere else, right? And so that's a very interesting. I just think that this second one, Borisov, was such um, such a small scientific announcement, right? And maybe it was announced, but like literally at the time, our planet was going through so much that we were not necessarily have the bandwidth to have a conversation about a second interstellar object.
Well, the thing about Borisov, there was a lot less like mystery around it. So we know a lot more about it because it passed close enough to Earth for us to use like a telescope and get some high resolution spectral data with spectroscopy, like I was saying, which is where each molecule that evaporates from the comet emits light at a very specific frequency, almost like a fingerprint. So this is also, by the way, how we know the chemical composition of distant stars. And it allows us to detect the signatures of the chemical composition of the coma of the comet. Then we also got direct radio wavelength images, which showed the gas distribution. So this was allowing us to estimate stuff like the how pristine the ice is, how long it's been in interstellar space, and whether it resembles the comets from our own solar system. So yeah, there was a lot less mystery around this. But yes, I mean, and that's the point. It has to be close enough to Earth with clear enough light for us to be able to observe that kind of detail so that we know the chemistry with high certainty.
Yeah, and I would also say, I think the biggest conspiracy, not in this one particularly, but isn't it convenient that when we need to see actual visible proof that our cameras suck? Like whether it's a comet
Whether it's Jeffrey Epstein's cell or
or fucking mermaids and like Bigfoot, for some reason, like our cameras just go haywire. Obviously, around these kind of special cases where we want to actually see proof that we're not alone and we're not here just like twiddling our thumbs while everyone is just watching us from afar. But so it's really interesting that what you're saying is this kind of gave more information about comets in general, and because there was nothing that was out of the ordinary in this one, we didn't really make a
no,
fuss
no, no.
about.
It gave more information about this specific comet.
Yeah,
And we were able to see the similarities with comets that originate from our Oort cloud.
right.
So,
Okay.
like with Oumuamua, for instance, there wasn't a coma or a tail, which is not natural for a comet entering our solar system approaching the sun, right? That should get heated up. Borisov acted the way we would kind of expect a comet to act, so it was a little bit more natural. So it left little room for alien conspiracy
Yeah,
theories.
yeah. However, it was what they're saying is it was a comment that was coming outside of our previous known understanding of how comments are formed. So because of that, it gave us more information to kind of continue the theory of comments, but like because it didn't act out really, it act out different because it was like different than many of our comments, but it still followed the physics of comets, and because of that we
It
didn't
followed
really.
some of our physics. Yeah, it
Yeah,
followed some of the processes. Like it showed us basically, the formation of distant star systems could very well, or in some instances, very similar to the processes within our own solar
yeah,
system. But it did also show some differences. And I
yes,
think what's so amazing is like the scientists that thought it was so pristine. It was the most pristine comet. Everything was so well preserved.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I feel like that one, yeah, it wasn't necessarily like the most interesting conversation around like really conspiracy stuff, and also because the trajectory was very consistent, right? And that's kind of what usually we will look for is if there's a trajectory that is very consistent, you can predict the flight path, and that usually means that there's no extra control of this object, right? So that's kind of why we thought, hey, it's following the same pattern that we expect in comets, and so yet because we have seen because this was an outside comet, we got more information to kind of reconfirm what comets look like and feel like, and comets outside of the system, what their differences are. But really, this second eye, Bosuro, but I forget its name. Sorry for
Borisov.
Borisov, right? Is already kind of like, like it really didn't add to kind of the deeper conversation that we're having. If anything, it was just a scientific fodder, science to kind of go nerdy over to kind of say, oh, more facts about a comment. But that's why I feel like that one was only to me like it triggered COVID. And after that, the rest it just disappeared because like COVID was like big enough that that was the precursor of COVID. And so whether or not it brought COVID, and I say that jesting because I know it didn't.
Charlie, what are you talking about? He didn't? What do you mean with inverted commas? Like, you're an astrologer, bro.
But in terms of the comet bringing COVID, right, is what I meant. Whether or not it
I
created
mean,
the
the comet brought COVID no more than what Jupiter brings blessings for us.
um
No more than what Saturn teaches us lessons of discipline and restraints.
what I'm trying to say is the controversy of COVID and its existence, right, may have been linked to this, but it didn't like what I'm saying is everyone's talking about COVID came from a bat in Wuhan, right? Is what I'm trying to say. And so obviously we weren't gonna go, hey, actually this comment caused this. However, it is still a factor in what happened to us. However, like what I meant to say, just because COVID in itself is its own little conspiracy, right, on the planet. So that's what I meant is by saying like the comment wasn't actually manifesting COVID. It might manifested us waking up to our what our purpose, but COVID itself to me was more of a human.
Well, remember what the ancients said. We're talking about the ancients that said comets brought with them um, divine intervention, okay? Correction of imbalances, all of these things. So, like COVID one, which we'll get into in a little bit of detail now, I'll go into it, would very much be divine intervention. Do you know what I'm saying? If you look at, I mean, let's the global lockdowns, okay, all the millions of deaths, the remote work becoming a thing, allowing, and what did this do? It allowed more time with our families. Layoffs pushed many of us into leaving the rat race and going off on a completely different trajectory with our lives. The environment had a bit of time to recover, like going on vacation and rejuvenation of nature. Do you know what I'm saying? There was documentaries on that. The isolation forced many of us to do like a lot of self-reflection. Okay, I mean, the same isolation also caused like a surge in mental health, fine, with issues like anxiety and depression skyrocketing. But this is my point. This is divine intervention at its finest. And so Borisov for me is very much giving me Neptune vibes, which in 2019, Neptune was already traveling through Pisces. So, which, by the way, Neptune was about to conjunct my sun then. But Neptune is primarily associated with isolation, depression, confinement, and of course, the deepest of spirituality.
Now, do obviously the comments are also relative to us. It is passing through an astrological marker, right? So, what is the zodiac wheel or zone that it was going through as it was passing us?
That's a very good question. I looked at that for 3AI Atlas, but well, in terms of where the sun is when 3AI Atlas passes us, I didn't look at that. I just looked at where the planets were of the vibe that I was getting from it. So like Borisov, I was getting Neptune vibe, so I wanted to see where Neptune was when it passed through. So that's kind of how I was thinking about it. I just like felt the energy of the comet and then looked where that energy was, what that energy was doing. But that's a very interesting thing. I mean, that's definitely an angle that we can look at as well.
Yeah. I mean, just because when we're talking about astrological conversations, the planets in whatever astrological zone is bringing its own energy at the time that it's passing through. So I feel like these comments are clearly coming from one of these 360 angles, right? Coming from, look, if we're looking at the comment itself, it must be coming from an angle of one of the astrological axis. So it would be interesting to see what is bringing with it as it's coming into our solar system.
No, I mean 100%. But so this for me was essentially the great pause, the forced stillness. Like you said, COVID stopped the world. And the point is, every ancient tradition says stillness precedes awakening. So this was essentially the start of when the world was thrown into its ego death. So there was a global crisis exposed with the collective shadow forces through fear, survival instincts, division, attachment to control. All these things were essentially a mirror to the human psyche. And COVID was acting as like a pressure cooker, causing a lot of the breakups, the breakdowns, the family ruptures, need I say, the career collapses. Just tower moments everywhere. It was just like a karmic accelerator, really. This is exactly the definition of what the ancients say the comets represent.
Yeah,
And then, of course, with yeah.
no, I'm just having this imagery of like ETs just like throwing pebbles in the ocean. Go, oh, watch what happens when we throw this pebble over there, right? So like threw a comment at us, like, watch, we're gonna wake them up. Okay, shh, and it just blows up the planet. And holy crap, we're going through these changes.
Well, and the other thing about the Neptune energy, what I was saying, is after COVID, we also had the rise of all the healers, the mystics, and the psychics. Massive increase in spiritual practitioners, energy healers, regular people doing yoga, meditation, breath work, and was because our inner world essentially became louder than the outer one. This is full on Neptune in Pisces energy for me. And it ultimately started the push of humanity towards this end goal of compassion, real connection, and this idea of unity consciousness. So, this for me was really our initiation into the Aquarian age.
Okay, okay. I can see where you're going with that. Okay, so Borisov comes in, then we get into major like awakening where COVID is the trigger point to get us into this kind of self-awakening slash recognizing the darkness that needs to be released, right? And that made us actually really tune into ourselves because the outside world shut down for a few years. And that was really powerful for us because like collectively, like you said, we were all starting to hear our inner voice, that inner guidance that made us all go into what I call spiritual development or spiritual cultivation, which made us really cultivate the silence within our field. Because up until then, especially in the Western world, we're always pushed to go, being distracted of the outside physical world. And so we really don't get to have a pause in our life. Compared to Eastern traditions, we often makes this kind of pause in our life, whether we're fasting, whether we're having religious conversations or spiritual conversation for a time where everyone just has to slow down and kind of like go through meditation. I feel like the whole planet was kind of forced to go through that, which made us kind of become much more aware of our like intuitive psychic sense. And I think that's where everybody started to explore their spirituality through these like psychic triggers and activations.
No, but exactly, this is the point. Or what I wanted to say earlier on when you were like, oh, but the comet didn't bring COVID because it was started in Wuhan.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like half of the stuff that like they've been
Charlie.
telling us.
How does astrology bring anything in? Does it just bring it in with a magic wand? It brings it in via some physical mechanism, bro. I don't know.
True,
It's
true.
like you've lost. It's like you've lost all orientation with the metaphysics because we're talking about comets.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same principle. I'm
Yeah.
seeing this as exactly the same principle as astrology, right? It's astrologers that read comets. It's the same people that read the planets. So
Right.
yeah, it will come in with Wuhan. But you're seeing now. I mean, we're going to go through this. You've already seen the link. Oh, with Oumuamua coming in, what happens afterwards?
If anything, I would say more it triggered people to go into the COVID scenario. It is kind of how by describing it that way, it makes more sense for me because yes, like that energy kind of created the instances where people within the space kind of like went into timelines, right? Just because again, COVID is just its own like conversation that would take days to just unwrap. That's kind of where I was going at it, but I get what you're saying in terms of like, no, actually it triggered people to go into the timeline of COVID. And from there, everything kind of like showed up. And that makes some sense. It just, COVID was just too many layers of conspiracy that we kind of like attached it. But
Yeah, no, that
but
there
I
was.
know
No,
what
I
you
see what
mean.
you're saying now. I see
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
saying
So
now.
I get what you're saying, and yes, actually, that's something that like I don't look at asteroids a lot. That's why like to me it's like wow, I have to like rethink the relationship of what I see as asteroids because you're bringing a whole nother layers to it that I'm still processing. Shall we get into now 3I, the third interstellar, and what we're now our present conundrum?
Finally. So, as you said earlier, it's going to be closest to Earth on about the 19th of December at 2025. And this is, as we've just discussed, the third interstellar object recorded. So, we've all heard the conspiracy theories on this one, but let's start with the science.
Yeah.
So, the one unusual thing about 3I Atlas is its unusually high carbon dioxide in its composition, possibly with some different dust particle structures as well, which suggests that it formed under very different conditions to comets in our own solar system. I
Okay.
would say even more different to the conditions of Borisov. And if we look at its backwards trajectory, we can't really locate a visible source of where it could have originated. This is why they're saying it's so old. They're giving all these numbers, millions, billions of years. They really don't know because there's no source in the backwards trajectory.
Similar to carbon dating. Got it.
Yeah, well, it's using like spectroscopy and those radio wavelength images that I was talking about. But anyway, so some of its behavior, like the development of its coma, because it does have a coma and a tail, but some of the behavior, like the development of its coma and its outgassing patterns, when it releases the gas as it gets closer to the sun, and its surface chemical composition still look a little bit anomalous when compared to other comets in our solar system. But the point is, we have less data on Atlas than Borisov because basically its coma is much dimmer than Borisov, and Borisov was also much closer to the Earth. So Atlas gave us fewer spectral lines, and some of the molecules that we detected, like we detected clearly with Borisov, are too weak to detect in Atlas. So our data isn't as certain with this one. And really, specifically, as at the time we're filming this video, like more investigation has to be done on that, right? The data is currently not available at the time that we're filming this.
In public spaces, right?
Well, I mean, the data, I get the data from peer reviewed papers and NASA data.
Yeah.
So from scientific peer reviewed. So, yeah, I mean, there's obviously a process with peer reviewed papers, and by the time NASA releases data, so that's where I'm getting the information from. It,
Right.
it is reliable information. I didn't get this from YouTube.
Scientific reliable. Okay, we're just gonna say it that way because let's just say that NASA is a little sketchy themselves. Because a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff you're describing, but there was also an issue where I've heard the timing of Atlas being so disconjuncted from everybody saying their hypothesis. And like the major issues is like the trajectory has changed many times. I used to think people were saying at one point it would hit November and then now it's December. Like the amount of times I've heard the change of trajectory of 3i Atlas, because I literally the people were saying at one point it was gonna hit October, like Halloween. I was like, oh yay, like we're gonna see some crazy comet on Halloween. And then now it's December 19th. And that's really interesting for me to hear because did it change? Did something change in the last 2-3 months?
Look, what I can say, what I do know is its acceleration. It's coming in super fast, and it's coming in with a hyperbolic acceleration. So this means its acceleration is not bound to the sun. But as we discussed earlier, this just means that it's from outside our solar system. These oaks that are saying all about uh, changes of trajectories, that for me is like a change in pathway.
Well, I would say in terms of the slowing down and speeding up has also happened, and that's why they cannot give
Oh,
you
so the speed.
an accurate timing of when it would hit us. December 19th was the most common, most recent, and now I'm hearing January 19th. So what's really interesting is NASA is one source, but
No, December 19.
yeah,
It's going to
December,
be its closest to Earth, December
yeah,
19.
but I've heard otherwise now, right? And I used to hear it was November it was going to hit. So what's really interesting is um what the bigger conspiracy now is. I think that NASA is no longer the only source of information we're getting, because China and other systems have bigger telescopes now. I'm sure Russia does too. And so what's happened is now, where we believe NASA was the only source of scientific space data, we're finding out that actually regular people with like fancy heavy telescopes are seeing things different from what NASA is seeing. And that's kind of the deeper conversation that we've
I
been
don't think regular telescopes can see Atlas.
I-
Not to the detail where you can verify composition and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, but I don't think NASA is the only source of data for things in
No,
space.
it's not the only source, but that's why Borisov was so certain.
Yeah,
Because Borisov, they got all the telescopes around the world, like from Russia, China, and all of that. They all had the same data. So
yes,
that's why Borisov's data
right.
is so with such high certainty.
Exactly, because we were all aligned to the things we saw. Today, we're not aligned with the things we see, and that is the conspiracy behind the conversation of what is Three-Eyed Atlas.
Well, because what we see is not clear. Atlas is not as close to Earth, and I said already, the light is more dimmer, so you can't see the level of detail that we saw with Borisov. Like you can't see those little molecules. You're seeing less of those spectral
But
lines.
science is just a step away from re-engage, realigning their tools for something new. So yeah, just like Borisov, we're just confirming what we already knew. With Three Eye Atlas, it's not. So it's forcing us to update our tools of testing, right? This is how all science grows, right? It grows because something happens, it doesn't know how to do it, so it creates a technology to figure out. Really, we as in the Western world like to see things to believe it, and so the telescope is going to get better because we're not able to see things, right? And that's the controversy, I think, is that, again, I don't think NASA is the only source of space data. And so, because now in the last couple of years, many people have developed technology. I mean, Starlink, yo, like we did not have Starlink before 2019, right? So today, when we're talking about Starlink, we have to assume that there are way better systems that can allow us to see space and calculate what's happening. And I think NASA is finally realizing they're not the only source. That's why Russia, China, and everybody's actually getting the different information, and that's why now the conspiracy is happening, because like nobody can actually um, um, be on the same page of the data they're getting. Even when they're saying it's dimmer, I don't trust NASA, because if they say it's dimmer, how many times have they updated and cleaned up their photos pictures of space, right? So what I'm trying to say now is, what
For
I'm
sure,
really
for sure.
excited that what you're trying to say is like we're now on the bigger precipice of revelation. And that's what's really exciting for me, because I think our scientific tool have shown us that we do not know what's happening outside of our solar system, and that there's way bigger conversation, because that then, as above so below, our planet is filled with spiritual magic mumbo jumbo that science doesn't understand, right? And so ironically, it needs not to go look into space to kind of go, we don't have the right tools to believe or to really prove that like spirit exists. Yet it wasn't until the quantum effect, quantum bridge, quantum entanglement, and the slit experiment that made us realize that we were not on the same um, physics as Newtonian physics. We're moved into quantum physics, and there's no more Newtonian physics. So what's really interesting, I believe that this object is forcing us to enhance our technology to see what's really happening in space. And I think that's going to, because now suddenly you're saying, hey, NASA, we don't trust your telescope. China, Japan, everyone's getting their own telescope. And now we're going to go, wait a minute, NASA, how come there's a lot more interstellar visitors than just these three ones that we have perceived because NASA deemed it so, right? And so obviously, we're speculating because until December 19th, we do not know what will happen to the Earth. So we're both speculating in this moment too. And so please don't take, our words as prophetic. We're just using our own like scientific hypothesis. And based on what we know, esoteric conversations and astrology, that there's a lot more going on in this particular interstellar object for me. And I think this is going to force space conversation because we didn't have the Space Force till now. We didn't have a Space Force in 2019, right? Or maybe 2017. So now that we have a Space Force, will Space Force tell us that they have tools to see actual? Because now we're talking about if there's a space invasion and we can't see through our atlas, that means can spaceship invade us because it's as dim as Three Eye Atlas, right? And this is the deeper conversation that I think we should be having because I'm a space guy, y'all. I've been a space guy for a long time.
We're getting to the alien invasions, Charlie. We'll get there. We'll
No,
get
but
there.
I'd say the alien invasion is definitely not coming through Three Eye Atlas.
Well, as I said, we'll get there. We'll get there. I wouldn't speak so soon. But what I want to say is so, despite all the hype you've been hearing, most of the scientifically observed behavior of Atlas is in fact comet like. And so it still does give us this rare glimpse into extrasolar system matter. But at the end of the day, we don't really know whether Atlas is in fact normal for interstellar comets or if it's an anomaly because our sample size at this point is like 3.
Yeah, exactly.
So, this brings me to the fact that it's giving me Saturn vibes. Because there is some restraint here. It's showing some discipline in what it reveals to us. It's like holding information back from us.
Really? I'm gonna say Pluto, not Saturn. I think Pluto.
Well, I was thinking Pluto. We are gonna get to Pluto because I do believe
Okay.
Pluto is in the mix.
Yeah.
Pluto, so that's why I said Pluto in Aquarius. We're getting there, but just
Yeah.
for me, just because of that restraint. Do you know what I'm saying? Where
Okay.
it's like not revealing all of its cards.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that, but Pluto plays that too. Pluto plays that as well, really well too. So I'd say, yeah, like a Pluto Saturn combo. I could see that.
So, in terms of what 3i Atlas means, I mean, we can go into that now because I don't really know exactly what 2026 holds, okay? But we can start with some of our spiritual speculation. I just wanted to recap like what we know so far, what we've discussed so far. Like, the first thing is that interstellar comets are extremely rare. And from an esoteric perspective, if we take the wisdom of the ancients into account, they do seem to coincide with catalytic shifts in collective consciousness. This is what we've been going through. I mean, we've been going through the after effects of Borisov. Now we're going to get hit with 3AI Atlas. It didn't originate from our solar system, so symbolically, it represents new codes, new information, new evolutionary pathways. They arrive on hyperbolic orbits, meaning they'll never return. So it's really about irreversible change, endings of like karmic epochs, openings of long closed gates, and an unnatural acceleration of what has been set into motion, right? And really, you'll see every time we get one of these visitors, our attention gets pulled upward toward this cosmic scale, towards the cosmic scale, like the meaning, the direction, coming up with these existential questions. And this is also why such events go hand in hand with some kind of restructuring, new philosophies, societal reevaluation. You know what I'm saying? So, in total, And since only as recently as 2017, as we've only had 3 interstellar visits, like we've already said, we could say that there's been a rise in frequency of cosmic visitors, right? All of a sudden, we're getting all these cosmic visitors. And if we take the law of correspondence into account, as above, so below, like we already said, I see this as likely like a galactic shift in energy that clearly happens to coincide with what can only be called an earth-wide spiritual activation. You know, this is like the after effects of COVID. Then people were still doing the self-reflection, like, oh, I'm a healer, I'm a healer. Now it's like getting activated, right? So we have that arrival of Oumuamua in 2017, which kind of like acted like the first galactic knock, like a cosmic invitation to waken, to realize that we ourselves are not just local to Earth systems. It was like a collective initiation into the global truth crisis with that information war, the surveillance awareness, the acceleration of AI. Then we had Borisov in 2019 with its pristine composition, reflecting our original blueprint, the perfection of our original blueprint, and bringing in a collective initiation into like a biological vulnerability crisis with COVID and the fragility of the body, followed by a wave of spiritual awakenings. So you can see this progression. It's a progression, Charlie. You know,
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
like astrology. And then we have 3i Atlas with all its mystery, more like walking into the unknown and coming right after Pluto has permanently shifted into Aquarius. So I'm thinking, like, with this different chemical composition, you know, due to its high carbon dioxide content, it could symbolically be showing us that a different spiritual chemistry is about to enter humanity.
That's interesting.
So it's arriving at the cusp of the transition from Sag into Capricorn. So Sag is vision, prophecy, divine message, spirituality. Capricorn is manifestation, authority, earthly governance. And so a comet entering during this exact window is like a prophecy becoming reality, or like the embodiment of spiritual knowledge into physical form. It's like, you know, really, like we said before, the omens of the comets was a reset of that spiritual authority.
Hmm.
And it comes when Jupiter in Cancer, which represents our emotional truth and ancestral healing, is opposing Capricorn, which is representing these established systems, the order, the governments. So I'm thinking we might see a rise in emotional authenticity pushing back against rigid systems, or revelations around our family, our ancestry, and our inner foundations. Maybe we will see some global tension between our emotional needs and our political structures. You know, interstellar comets, I would say, really have the potential to certainly pressure test these oppositions.
Yeah.
But so this could very well be the collective's initiation into that spiritual identity crisis. But it should ultimately take us through like a refinement cycle.
Ooh, refinement cycle. Yeah. I think that refinement cycle will come.
Refinement.
Yeah, yeah. That refinement cycle is still. Yeah, I feel like we're still in the like what I call the revelations of the Bible, right? Or the revelations of many of these stories, read spiritual books about the revelation of what is our reality, right? And you see it really after the second one when we talked about actually this spiritual awakening that happened in people were actually more in tune with their spiritual psychic intuitive systems after COVID. And I think what's really interesting about this third interstellar object is that, like we say, we're progressively getting activated to become spiritually aligned. And now in this 3i Atlas, I feel like it's, everything happens in threes, right? We all know this. This is a scientific, spiritual concept, the threes, the trinities, right? And so with the third eye, I feel like, and also that third eye, right, that we're talking about, and even the word Atlas, which we all know, Atlas carried the world on his shoulders, right?
Oh, because Atlas is the first vertebra.
Yes. C1
It's also called Atlas.
is also called Atlas. Yes, because it's holding the weight of
Nice link,
our,
nice link.
right, of the weight of our head, of our intelligence. And so what we're really talking about here, I feel like, is that the reason we're getting much more conspiracies, a much more diverse perspective of this, is because the the old way of getting information disseminated to us from the top down, I call it the pyramid scheme, right? The people above with the elite powers are spreading the information down to us for us to believe. In the last one with COVID, I believe that everybody at the bottom of the pyramid woke up and realized we don't have to take any information from above, meaning the human above, not space and heavens above, but meaning that the elites and those who are running the planet and their perspective of what they think we should believe. Really, this is where religion comes from, because this is the conversation of religion and the elites playing out the programming of humanity. And I feel like these are triggering us into finding our own sovereign understanding of what spirit is exploring, and making us leave what we call the matrix, the Western limited society. And I say that Western because Western is a very dominant society running the planet today, right? Yes, it's coming face to face with the East, but I think what's happening is now people, so if you guys don't know anything about remote viewing and people accessing their psychic gifts, remote viewing's blown up because the CIA released their paperwork that they were doing remote viewing. There's a few papers that come out, but like there's the telepathy tapes where they are seeing that autistic children are actually very telepathic, and if you only let the autistic kids talk to each other, they don't even need to use words. They are telepathically connecting, and so it's, if anything, we are the inferior code of autistic children because they're able to connect in a telepathic multi-dimensional space. And so I feel like Three Eye Atlas is bringing this third eye activation to allow us to see the unseen, because we've been led to believe Bigfoot's fake, space is fake. Oh, you talk about aliens, haha, you're funny. You're just a stupid person who believes in aliens. This has been the MO of the system, trying to make us believe we're not God. We need a priest to talk to God. We need to eat wine and bread to talk to God. Like, this is literally the spiritual awakening, is to realize that we have a direct line to spirit. So I'm just really, to me, I feel like there's a lot more people tuning in to this object that is really activating their remote viewing abilities, their astro traveling abilities, their psychic intuition, connecting to God and to spirit. So for me, I'm pretty excited about this because from all the things I've watched on social media and the internet, and what's really exciting is, yes, AI is involved now in feeding social media. However, there's a ton more people who are actually seeing stuff in the sky, and they're recording it. And so where before we will only get, right, even during Roswell, one group of people saw something, they put it on the newspaper, and within days it was taken offline off the newspaper and said, okay, it was your weather balloon, there's no aliens. So they had to backtrack because the way news was spread out during the time of Roswell, the 1960s. Today, in 2025, like, if I see something and I put it live on my phone, the entire internet sees it, unless it obviously is getting censored by the tech oligarch from the, again, the pyramid scheme of who's passing on information to us. And so what's really exciting now is actually, I'm not actually, I 100% do not listen to governments and organizations who have a lot of money, because their money tells the story, versus, to me, on the internet, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, regular humans are scientists. They're the ones capturing things that they see in their life, in their world, and they're capturing it on the phone and they're sending it to the internet. And that's changed how we're getting and disseminate information. And so now today, I do think that other telescopes are seeing 3i Atlas very differently from NASA, and that is why there's a big argument on what 3i Atlas is. I personally think it is filled with beings and it's not a random asteroid, but that it is actually a spaceship. And that is changing the conversation across the planet, because I think there's been spaceships
They thought
already
Oumuamua
on
was
the.
a spaceship too, by the way.
Yes, however, I do think some of them could have dropped off here. Some of them could have left Oumuamua and actually traveled to Earth, right? But at the time, we still had only one source of information, where today the whole planet believes they're professional telescope readers and they're seeing something different. And that to me is a deeper conversation because it is
Are
happening
they seeing
where.
something different though? Because I'm watching this shit on YouTube, Charlie, and you know what? It's a bunch of shit. It's videos it's videos from people that don't know shit. It's half of it is not even real footage,
No, 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 no.
or it's
I
taken from
understand,
some
but
photo, or
YouTube is still censored. I understand, but YouTube is still censored. I do check Instagram, TikTok. A lot of people actually go on the deep web and then put their information there. So all I'm saying is most of my information is not from what we call, like, um, certified information. Like, no, since COVID and pre-COVID, y'all, I have not been following any systems that is paid to tell me anything. The news, NASA, the government. If you guys really believe in trust your government, you guys have not been paying attention to the last 10 years that's been going on. So again, even in I'm not going to start dissing schools, but as you can see, the academic system is not in the best shape right now, right? And so because of that, like, you have to really rethink, where are you getting this information? Sure, fine, YouTube. There's some, what's it called, amateur telescopers, right? However, to me, I would trust an amateur telescoper more than a paid agent of NASA.
but they don't.
Period.
Their telescopes can't see shit. So what are you trusting?
We don't know what they see. That's what I'm saying. Is NASA also.
Fine. So why are you trusting them? You still don't know what they're seeing versus what NASA is seeing, because apparently Atlas is too far for that telescope to see any detail. So really, you can't trust anybody.
Besides your third eye? What I'm trying to say is, since 2019, way more people have been tuned, and because of that attunement to spiritual information.
That's because of Borisov, which was not a spaceship.
How do we not know these are spaceships?
Asking the question is fine, but saying that you believe it's a spaceship because these telescopers are putting these images on, like, that's where I draw the line. But asking the questions is the point, right? We're supposed to.
Listen, I confirm with my own intuition and God first, and then go and confirm the information, just like you do. So these telescopers, I'm not just randomly searching YouTube. I'm being guided to watch these videos when I'm talking to God, going, God, give me some answers to this, because we're having a conversation again. And that's what I'm saying, is way more of us are having this deeper conversation to God, and we're being sent to correlate information, and none of that information matches NASA's official statement. That's where I'm at. And so all I'm saying is, I'm not the one who follows official narratives.
Well, there's nothing official about this narrative that we've been discussing throughout this episode. I mean, besides the little bit of scientific tidbits I've been given.
But that's what I'm saying, is we are having this conversation, lunacy and logic, because we need to bring both conversations in. So what I'm trying to say is, I, for some reason, had to go into my lunacy first because the logic wasn't matching, which, again, it's not meeting. That's what I'm saying, is from the lunacy, I recognize that there's a misdirection of logic.
Well, I feel like that's also like Sagittarius and Capricorn energy. Because it's so interesting that you brought like psychic awareness and stuff into it. Because I feel like the fact that it comes in like right after that sun's or right before that sun's transition from Sagittarius into Capricorn, we said it's about the embodiment of our spiritual authority, but I also feel like it will be an enhancement of our psychic bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, I said Atlas is not telling us anything, not telling us everything, and I feel like Atlas doesn't need to tell us everything. It's giving us the opportunity to get the answer from within.
Yes.
So it's serving as the arrival of interstellar consciousness on Earth. And there is where I would say is the core essence of Pluto in Aquarius energy, Charlie.
Right. However, again, you don't know everything that's going on. Pluto likes to play the cards very close to its heart, right? So what I'm saying is, yeah, all of us can speculate. However, we won't know until it actually shows up, and even then, like I hope December 19th, but I've heard otherwise now, right? So again, in the next 2 weeks in our next episode, maybe we'll have a deeper conversation. Like, okay, turns out December 19th was not the date, and it changed its trajectory, right? All I'm saying is I trust my guidance, and it says that hold on to everything you can right now because shit's about to flip even harder than the last two interstellar things that we experienced, because this is a big one. This is the third one. Again, it's a one,
Yeah.
two, three punch.
No, I would definitely say it's the biggest one. Yeah. The other two were just like preparations.
Yeah, but the preparations has not been easy because it's telling me right now, it's like, no, actually prepare for something bigger than any of us can believe, because our entire structure has been a lie. And it took us three iteration to finally wake up to the final truth of the system. So that's what I'm saying is I'm really excited for this, because again, 2026 is going to be a shit show astrologically, but also I feel like there's a lot more going on. um, I think the revelation of this entire planet and what's been running will be eventually revealed in the next year. And so again, like for me, all I'm just gonna say is trust the lunacy in this time frame, because your logic won't make sense. That's all. That's why we're having this conversation, because I'm a very logical person, stellium and Virgo. My logic took me to lunacy because logic of the system today is disinformative. So that's why I don't fully trust the logic of the system or the logic that I've been raised to believe. So that's what I'm trying to say is this conversation is exciting because we get to play in the lunacy of it all.
Well, so I would say that after Atlas's arrival, like in 2026, everything, like you said, it's the biggest thing. So the things that I would be looking out for after everything we've discussed, what I project is certainly a collapse of outdated soul contracts. That this would mean like more breakups and separations, but I wouldn't be disheartened about it.
Yeah. Well, again, I feel like we're transitioning to a space, a vibration that requires more conscious beings to be aware. And those who cannot are just they're not dying per se. Dying is such a harsh word in today's system, but like they're transitioning off of our timeline, of our reality, whatever that means.
Well, this is the breakups and the separation. So that's like,
Yeah.
losing people. Yes, maybe it could be death, but or feel like death when you lose somebody, but it's more like a separation is how I'm feeling it.
I do think there will be physical deaths. I think many people have been propped up for too long to suffer in this reality, and I think that's actually a it's discontinuous to spirit, and so it's really trying to like clean up that energy for sure. Because I do believe that many of us are here to force to suffer, and I think that is not an inherent code in our reality, and we're not meant to suffer like we are.
It's not, but those that are suffering, they're not going to necessarily get off easy just by dying, bro. It doesn't work like that. That's not how the soul learns.
No, I believe some of them will transition into a more dense earth to continue their journey. But many of us who have awakened are ready to move into the higher frequency of the planet. and that will look like, again, like quantum entanglement. It's kind of like a TV station. Suddenly now channels 2, 4, 5, and 6 are no longer accessible to us, and suddenly we're all accessing channel 101, 222, and 333 is what I'm trying to say. And so to us, it looks like people may have died. Some people will choose to leave in physical bodies, because some of us have been dealing with like physical ailments that unfortunately there's not enough spiritual energy to kind of reset that body. So I do think that there is going to be split, and it's going to feel like death, but I do think people are transitioning out of body too. And that's not meant to be bad. I really believe those who transition out of body will be there in spirit form for us when we transition into the new earth. Because I do really believe that actually our true abilities is to see ghosts and spirits, to talk to ghosts and spirits, to heal spiritual karmic ties. The fact that we don't have access to that is, to me, like what we do. We're living the Kali Yuga. We're not able to access spiritual beings that cross over. I feel like we're moving to a place where we're going to be able to see those who have passed over, and we can have a conversation so we can clear karma between the two. That's what I believe, you know, eighth house signs are. Like really the scorpionic people. I've met so many people who speak to spirits, and I say, yo, are you helping people cross over, or are you helping people who are alive who need to talk to spirits? Because that's your gift. The ability, like the movie Ghost, the fact that people are not able to talk to the spirits as they pass creates karma and makes them reincarnate. But if we're suddenly now in the fifth higher dimensional vibration, those who pass are able to have a conversation with those who are living in the physical sense, and are able to clear karma, changes the conversation. So
Well, I think once you've died and you left, I think your chance of clearing karma is, for with a few exceptions, is pretty much done for, because those people that are exiting right now are making space for the soul contracts that are more aligned with our updated spiritual identities. So the point is, ain't nobody got time for that.
but that's why the world is splitting, because we don't have the time to wake up everybody. We're trying to wake up the most amount of people, and those will flip into a different channel of the what I call holographic experience.
Well, I do think the other stuff to look out for is like a reorganization of the power structures both within us and externally. So you're talking more about the power structures within us, right? Our gifts and the power that we have.
But we will reorganize ourselves. We will reorganize ourselves. The pyramid scheme doesn't work anymore.
Exactly. And the pressure on all there'll be pressure on all false identities. Okay, this is like individuals, but also collective, like societal, political, relational, which is what you're talking about. I feel like 3II Atlas, which also is like a little bit of an extension of what you're saying, will be an amplification of the clearance of our solar plexus and crown chakras. So solar plexus being life force, what you're specifically talking about, crown chakra abilities, and and third eye, sixth chakra.
I mean, it's interesting. Again, it's called 3-Eye Atlas, right? So that third eye snuck in for some reason. That's the game right now. It's the amount of information that's being put out there on both sides means that we have to discern the lunacy within us first. That's why we're having this conversation. We keep saying this: trust your inner guidance first, and then confirm the physical reality. And because that's happening more and more people are doing that, they're seeing, basically people are seeing angels and plasma beings showing up in the sky, and they're recording this and people are calling it AI. That's where I think the spirit discernment is going to recognize what is, of spiritual resonance, and then what is AI will be AI to trick us into believing that what we see as these plasma beings as fake. And the amount of AI footage is also ridiculous, because they're trying to tell people all kinds of conspiracies around 3-Eye Atlas, which isn't true, but it's confusing what is coming out that is true. that people just see as like, oh, you're just making shit up because you're channeling. And so this is where like now we're like second guessing spiritual psychics because we want to believe that NASA knows everything about this object in space. So just like how you called me out on asteroids and comets with astrology, I think a lot of people are having that
I
disconnection
didn't call
between
you out,
what.
Charlie. I was just redirecting you back to your initial thought process.
Yeah. But you were right in calling me out on that because I needed to make that relationship in my mind. So I'm saying is a lot of people are having a disconnected relationship of what 3i Atlas could be because of what they've been taught to believe in their reality. That's all. So what I'm saying is AI and and all this disinformation is trying to confuse the scenario. That's why right now, because of Basurov, but the second AI, a second eye object, Borisov, it made us realize we have internal guidance. That's why we've been training during COVID for a few years, so that when we come into 3i Atlas, we would start to trust the lunacy within us, the God within us. And that's why right now everyone is going to have different conversations around it because everyone has a different relationship with God that allows them to access the deeper truth of what's happening. So that's why everyone is coming from a different perspective depending on where they are in consciousness. So you were saying we are being forced to converge into a higher consciousness, and in that process we're going to get everything that tests our ability to be in alignment with spirit and our consciousness, deeper consciousness.
Well, I definitely think it is one of the things, or some of the things to still look out for in 2026 is, like you're saying, it's essentially a return to cosmic awareness, with people that are going to be asking the bigger questions. And this new, like, spiritual leadership emerging from within, Neptune and Saturn finishing off in Pisces right there. But the deeper side of it, and this is, I mean, because you're more saying it like an end goal, and the point is there's still some healing that's going on. This 3AI Atlas for me, with Jupiter in Cancer opposing Capricorn, is ancestral healing cycle surfacing. So this is especially healing cycles around our lineage, our inheritance, and our belonging. So there is still healing that's happened. It's not like we're going to emerge and everybody's going to be perfect.
No. So what I'm trying to say is, and like you're saying, is it's divine intelligence based on primordial spirit, which means that all of our ancestral lineage trained in the world of the elements, and they were alchemists of their world. And today, we're fake alchemists of the digital world, meaning that we've been tricked out of our own divine gifts. So, the reason why Jupiter in Cancer opposing Capricorn, right, is to say, hey, your bloodline and genetic factors are the cultivation of, I don't want to go ETs, but genetic and spiritual information over time. And so our ancestors, like, and we talk about this, Egypt, uh, Greece, and Peru, or they were these beautiful, fully activated civilizations where today we're just, shadows of them because they understood the divine intelligence in all things. And so when we say now, like you're saying, we're going back to our ancestral wisdom comes with our culture. That is why my guides told me, Charlie, stop with the ET shit. Go home to your ancestors. They have the gift you need to give you access to the galactics. Because the galactics landed on the planet, cultivated cultures, and you are the embodiment of galactic wisdom in culture. So why now suddenly you're seeing yoga culture coming out? Because it's an Indian culture derived by ancient civilizations. You're seeing Taoism and Qigong and Tai Chi and all that. You're seeing Native Americans coming out saying, hey, your science is our science. We are all talking about the same spiritual science, which is native science, which is indigenous science. And that is where Jupiter in Cancer is trying to teach us and remind us, you are all indigenous of the planet and you have power connected to the planet. So now that divine consciousness waking up in us is saying, go back to your ancestral wisdom because we embedded the information you needed today in your genetics. And that is why now we are having this deeper awakening within us, because our genetics are unfurling, because when they're stressed, they curl. When they unstress and we finally rest and relax, they uncurl, and it starts to open up our genetic information. Meaning that I believe that we're being pushed into our familial cultural technology, basically ancient medicine, back into our field so that we actually can make a relationship and connection to Earth, to Father Sky, and eventually to the what I call the cosmic neighborhood as a whole. And so, Three Eye Atlas is whatever it is causing the trigger of this awakening. So that's why I've been asked to do a lot of presentations um, in medical places, medicine, religion, and they all want us to hear. They want to hear the traditional Taoist culture, because that's missing, right? We have, like, the Christian has the Gnostics teachings, the Hindus have the Sufis, right? And what I mean by that is they all had deeper ancient spiritual wisdom that was lost and created into religion, right? So Taoism of the East became Buddha came in and created Buddhism out of Taoism. Jesus came in and created out of Gnosticism, right? On all these different Indian gods or prophets came in under the Sufi and created their religion under that. So I do think that what's happening today is that Jupiter in Cancer wants us to go back to our ancestral wisdom, our ancestral spirituality, which is native and not religious.
I don't think Sufism is ever going to go back to Hindu because that's Islamic.
Oh, sorry, I meant Sufi and Muslims. So Muslim is a religion, Sufism is the original spiritual text. So like the Jews is Kabbalah, the Kabbalistic system, right? Kabbalah is their Jewish mysticism. I'm misconfused. So the Hindus or the Indians have their own version of mysticism that is.
The Hindu mysticism is the Kundalini journey.
Yes. So again, like, what we're doing is going backwards into our own genetics to access these spiritual gifts that we always had, but we held them down because we were living in the today's Western human dominant programming. And so that's Capricorn. So we experience a Pluto in Capricorn going to Pluto in Aquarius, which is the end of Capricorn's era, which was the beginning of COVID. So COVID also showed the dysfunction of the corporatized system, right? Corporations, businesses, governments, right? All these heavy authoritarian constructs. So as we're ending those constructs, we are starting to become the leaders are going to create villages of people and no longer having centralized power, but decentralized power based on the bioregion you're in. So I do think Three Eye Atlas is waking us up to go back to like that. I don't say indigenous, but it is like that native culture where we were villages of people and we were in one-to-one relationship with each other and God, rather than this disconnected from all your neighbors and you have no idea where God is, and that's because the system have confused us in what I call logic-based programming rather than the spirit lunacy-based programming. So that's why, again, our show is so important, because we're trying to bring the logic and lunacy so that we don't take one without the other. It's a two hemisphere of the brain.
Well, I really think so. Based on everything you said, I think we're already now starting to see the evidence is starting to show how far away star systems are connecting to Earth's evolutionary timeline. And it's being revealed with each interstellar visit. And if you look at what the ancients told us about our homegrown comets, I think it's pretty much the same principles with interstellar comets, but like on steroids. So
Yes.
that's why everything is bigger with these comets.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited for these. I think we are experiencing major revolutions on the planet. Some of us were born for this time. So I'd say all of us just be in acceptance of who you are. This is why we talk about astrology so much. lean into who you are, because when you lean into who you are, your access to spirit becomes much more potent and focus on your spiritual evolution rather than everybody else's spiritual evolution. So I would say, this is just a fun conversation. Please don't take any of this we talked about as, serious and, matter of fact.
I did say it was an esoteric extrapolation.
Exact. I love it. I love the esoteric extrapolation, and that's where we're just having a conversation. So I hope you guys really enjoyed our different conversation this time. We don't have necessarily any kind of temple of healing wisdom. I just think that we're in a very exciting time for us to be activating our full divine gifts.
Touche, what Charlier said.
Do you have any conclusion before we end our show?
No, I think I pretty much said my closing thoughts with like how each interstellar object is just slowly introducing us to new concepts, and we got to keep a lookout and see what more is to come. Let's deal with
Yeah.
2026 first, shall we?
Well, let's deal with ending 2025 really nicely. And you may probably see us in 2026 in our next episode, but
Yeah, we still got to finish off Neptune at 29 degrees Pisces. Exactly.
yeah, y'all, it's 2026 in the beginning of it will be a little tricky, but 2026 will be a doozy. So I'm excited that we're here for you all as we also share our own discovery, exploration of the astrological unfurling of this beautiful magical story we're in. So thank you for joining us all. So until next time, enjoy the interstellar objects.
Exactly. Namaste, y'all.
Bye.